What does your local park mean to you if you're lucky enough to have one? Our local parks are often at the heart of our communities. They're places where we can escape from our busy modern lives. They're sanctuaries for simple outdoor recreation or for relaxation in a natural setting. But what does that really mean? Or we could ask, why does that mean so much? We refer to these places as our local green spaces, and that in itself is revealing, because in a world where green was once the norm and nature was everywhere, our parks are now defined by being green. They're like the last places left very often in our communities where the natural world still really shines and thrives for us. So our parks have become our local gateways to nature, and that is more important today than arguably ever before, because we're not in normal times anymore. We are in fact in an emergency, the so-called nature emergency. We'll talk a bit more about that in a moment, but it's something that is increasingly going to affect every one of us. We'll all become aware of the problem sooner or later, and we'll all have to be part of the solution. And in that context, our parks can provide us with so much more than just opportunities for leisure. As our local conduits to the natural environment and our connection to the nature on our doorsteps, our parks not only provide us with opportunities to support our health and well-being, but can also help gently lead us back to an appreciation and an understanding of nature at a time when this is required of us more than ever. So today I want to share some thoughts on the true potential and significance of our parks, and I want to share a vision based on my own experience for how these local green spaces can be reimagined as catalysts that could ignite a nature revolution, because we really need nothing less. So let's talk about why we need that. Let's talk about the nature emergency for a moment. This is the depressing bit. It's very much a global emergency, but let's bring it home here to Wales with a few examples. So here in Wales, we've lost nearly all of our native wildflower grassland, well over 95% of those iconic wildflower meadows that are so culturally significant in our landscapes and our psyches, and even more important ecologically for a whole range of species and ecosystem functions, pretty much all gone in the last century. If we think about our insects here in Wales, a recent study showed that we've had a 55% crash in our flying insect populations, and that includes our bees, butterflies, and other flying insects. These are invertebrates that are so crucial to ecosystem functioning that we know life on Earth would collapse without them. And then if we think about wildlife in general in Wales, the latest State of Nature report shows that 1 in 6 species in Wales is at risk of extinction. A third of all mammals in Wales are at risk of extinction, and we could go on. But this is something that's going to seriously affect every one of us and is seriously affecting every one of us. These species and these ecosystems are like the engine parts of our life support systems. They provide and regulate our clean air, clean water, healthy soils for food production, safe and habitable climates, all regulated by these critical components that we're now losing globally at a staggering rate. And the more we lose, the closer we get to system collapse. And that sounds really dramatic, but a little bit of serious research will confirm it. So if you bring climate change to bear on that as well, that even more sort of ramps up the pressure on our species and ecosystems. The climate is changing before our eyes. It's going to get much worse. We know it's going to get much worse. That adds huge extra pressure to our species and ecosystems as they struggle to adapt. So ironically, at this point in our history, we need nature to be in the best possible condition. We need our landscapes and our natural environment to be nature-rich, biodiverse, ecologically connected, thriving, robust, and resilient to the changes that we know are going to come. And we need that to happen not for nature's sake, but for our sake, so that nature can continue giving us those ecosystem services on which we all depend. But the sad and frightening reality is that nature is anything but robust and resilient at the moment, as we've just heard. So we need to find ways to rise to this challenge, because it's a remarkable fact, I guess, that we've seen this emergency come in for years and years. It's been on the horizon for decades. We understand the problem scientifically better than we ever have done. But despite the gravity of the situation we find ourselves in, we are still seemingly incapable of collectively rising to this challenge at the scale and at the pace and with the sense of urgency that we need to. So despite all our efforts, something crucial is clearly being missed in our approach to that. And there's a suggestion as to what that might be in the words of the UN Secretary General on the screen behind me, because there's now a growing understanding that we've been perhaps focusing on the symptoms of the problem and not the underlying root cause. So pushing species to the brink of extinction, trashing our life-supporting ecosystems, polluting our air and our water, these aren't the actual problem, these are the symptoms of the problem. We can only do all of that or turn a blind eye to all of that being done on our behalf for one core underlying reason, and that's our own collective broken relationship with nature. The climate emergency, the nature emergency, they're ultimately fueled by us, by our social values, by our attitudes, beliefs, and behaviors. And currently, clearly, those attitudes, beliefs, and behaviors are not anywhere near in alignment with our long-term best interest. Studies show, and plenty of research now shows, that the more we feel connected to nature, the more we have a sense of having a relationship with nature, the more likely we are by far to engage in more pro-nature, pro-conservation, pro-environmental behaviors and choices and actions. So it stands to reason that the more we can connect people with nature, the more opportunities we can provide for people to build a meaningful relationship with nature, the more likely we are to build a critical mass of informed and inspired and motivated people who can become more effective agents for change in their own lives, in their communities, and ultimately in the world as a whole. So we need to find mechanisms for facilitating that connection. We need to find ways of allowing people to have that contact with nature and build that relationship with it. And this is where I think our parks can play such a fundamental role. They are some of the best assets we have because they are there in our communities, filled with nature, and they have the potential to reach out to people and help them build that relationship. And it starts by, first of all, recognizing that our parks are about more than just nature, about leisure. They are some of the best assets we have, as I say, because they provide a whole range of different benefits to us. I work for an organisation called the Valleys Regional Park. It's a partnership organisation focused on the South Wales Valleys and focused in particular on the landscapes and the green spaces across the region and the wide range of benefits those green spaces can provide to local people and communities if we can link them up with those green spaces. And this includes benefits right across the board, economic benefits, environmental benefits, health and well-being benefits, but all ultimately derived from the fact that these spaces, our green spaces, provide the opportunity to have contact with the natural environment. That's where the magic is. So let's explore that in a bit more detail by focusing on health. I really like this quote from Jung: "Whenever we touch nature, we get clean." We know that having contact with nature is inherently good for us. 20 minutes spent in a natural setting has been shown to reduce blood pressure, to reduce stress hormones like cortisol. It reduces the symptoms of anxiety and depression. Contact with nature boosts our mood, boosts our levels of inspiration, concentration, motivation. We sometimes forget that for hundreds of thousands of years, the natural environment was literally our natural environment. It's where we belonged. And for all the trappings of our modern civilization, it still is. The root word for our word health means wholeness or to be whole, and it seems that we are more whole and more fully ourselves when we are in contact with nature. So if nothing else, we need to reevaluate the worth of these local green spaces as being fundamental to our overall health infrastructure. They are the local gateways to nature, and so they are the local gateways to accessing that full range of benefits because they allow that contact with nature. But they can go further and we can go further because we know that there's a difference between having contact with nature, as powerful as that is, but then having a genuine, meaningful connection with it, imbued with a sense of meaning and knowledge and understanding. So can our parks then go further to provide those opportunities to have that genuine, visceral, meaningful connection with nature? And I think, obviously, they can. And to illustrate my thinking on this, I want to take you to the park, which is at the heart of this community here in Bridgend in South Wales. And that's a place called Bringarw Country Park, just down the road from where we are now, because it's a place that I think embodies much of the potential of all parks to a certain extent in helping us kindle or rekindle that relationship with the natural world. All of these images on the screen behind me were taken of Bringarw by myself because for over a decade I had the privilege of working as a ranger at Bringarw, working as part of a small team. And they were some of the most rewarding years of my career because during my time at Bringarw, working with that team, it really felt like we had embarked on a mission to connect people with their natural heritage. Bringarw is relatively small as country parks go, but like many country parks, it has a wide range of natural habitats, everything from wildflower meadows to woodlands and wetlands. And crucially at Bringaroo, the local community is directly involved in the management of that environment through a thriving volunteer program. And through that volunteer management program, we as the park managers not only had a really important additional resource and extra capacity to better manage the park, resulting in this amazing array of habitats, but also the participants in that program had a hands-on experience of managing those environments and those natural habitats and the full range of skills, knowledge, and understanding that go along with that. And those skills and that knowledge and understanding could be taken by the participants into their own lives. There's 100 square miles plus of garden in Wales. That's a huge potential habitat if we had the confidence and the knowledge to work with it. But also, participants often use those skills and that knowledge as a springboard to get their own careers in the nature sector. The whole thing ultimately results in a park which is absolutely thriving and very accessible, and ultimately then becomes the perfect setting, not only for the local communities to better engage with the wildlife on their doorsteps, but as the perfect setting to engage and to inspire the next generation. And that's obviously crucial. If we're going to affect a long-term culture change in our approach to the natural world, we need to make sure young people have opportunities to forge their own connections with nature and forge their own relationships with nature. And so at Bringaroo, we developed this amazing education program that was a bit of a beacon and attracted well over 60 local schools annually during my time there. Half of those schools were coming from outside the county borough, which shows that there's a demand for it more broadly. And our whole ethos was based around the idea that it's about inspiring the children and giving them a hands-on, meaningful experience of it. As David Attenborough says, far better than me, no one will protect what they don't care about, and no one will care about what they've never experienced. So it's not enough to teach children a little bit in the classroom for a few lessons a term. It is about having that hands-on, immersive experience. And that was our whole approach. And by the way, this happened before my time there. I helped develop them, but it's still going on now. It's still thriving. But our ethos was to really make sure they had that meaningful, positive experience. We did that through a range of different means, through bushcraft, through den building with them in the woods, pond dipping, mini beast hunts, guided nature walks, all designed to excite and inspire a sense of discovery, adventure, exploration. These are the things we know are what forges that really meaningful relationship, which they will hopefully then carry throughout their lives. It was an absolute joy to watch the impact it had on those children as they dragged their families back on the weekends to point out what they'd learned and where they'd been. And as I say, some of the most rewarding years of my career. There's a fundamental part of all of this without which it's impossible to realize the potential of our green spaces and our parks in the way that I've just described, and that is obviously the dedicated teams behind these sorts of initiatives. The rangers, the wardens, the volunteer coordinators, the educators, the interpreters. These are the unsung heroes of our parks where these job roles still exist, and in many cases, even in most cases now, they don't exist anymore. But where they do exist, these people are the mentors and the guides who have the skills and the knowledge to help us reconnect with nature, and in turn, they can convey those skills and that knowledge to us. So I personally think that these job roles, these rangers, wardens, educators, volunteer coordinators, they are some of the most important green jobs that we could be invested in today if we're serious about rebuilding our relationship at a community collective level with the natural world. In the climate and nature emergency, we have to repair not just our ecosystems, but our own relationship with nature. And places like Bringaroo taught me that that can be done on the doorsteps of communities. The lessons from the park at the heart of this community, Bringaroo, could be replicated across the nation. We could have a network of hubs on the doorsteps of communities offering these opportunities to be educated, upskilled, inspired. Not every park can do everything that Bringaroo does, but every park can do something in its own unique way. And Bringaroo, that park at the heart of this community, could do so much more with more. And that absolutely means investment. And that's often a dirty word these days. Public sector finances are extremely tight, we know they are. But there's no real shortage of money in the world, it's just in the wrong places. And there's money out there in corporate social responsibility pots, there are rich organizations and businesses, and we need to access it, because this isn't just an investment in green space. Our parks could become the epicenters of a nature revolution. They could be sanctuaries, skill centers, classrooms, bridges that not only reconnect us with the natural world, but reconnect us with a larger, grander understanding of who we are and what our place is in the world. The climate and nature emergency ultimately means that we have to make a choice. We could continue down the path of disconnected destruction and faff around the edges, or we could embark on a genuinely transformative journey of reconnection and regeneration. And through our parks and our local green spaces, that's a journey that could start right in the hearts of our communities. So my idea worth spreading is, if we invest in our parks and local green spaces, and if we crucially invest in those job roles that can unlock the potential of these places for reaching people and reconnecting people with their natural heritage, then we can transform these local havens not only into catalysts for change, but into a brighter, richer, and ultimately more hopeful future for us all. Thank you.